Dan Tolzman gives us a draft update. Who's in my top 5 for the draft? And did Pascal Siakam throw shade at the Toronto Raptors?
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
It's your favorite part of the day. Thanks for making Locked On Raptors your first listen every day. I'm Vivek Jacob. I've been covering the Toronto Raptors for 8 seasons across several outlets. You can follow it all on X, Instagram, and YouTube. And be sure to check out the Locked On Raptors Discord, where you can talk all things basketball, but especially the Raptors. This episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. It is Monday, June the 23rd. Dan Tolzman spoke to the media, so we're going to dig into that. I have a few mailbag cues left over from Friday because those are draft-related questions, so we're going to dig into that. And then finally, we will get into Pascal Siakam's comments after Game 7 about the Raptors. Thanks again to those questions on Discord. Just to let you know, the plan for the week, Tuesday to Friday, I've got guests lined up, and we're just going to do everything on the draft. Obviously, we'll see if there's breaking news that comes in alongside that, and we'll cover that. But beyond that, it's going to be very draft-centric, and so hopefully you get your fill. All right, so Dan Tolzman, for those of you who don't know, is the assistant GM and VP of player personnel. There was a media availability today, so I went over to the OVO Athletic Center and heard what he had to say. So just to sum it up, we'll do some takeaways. He was asked about the draft this year versus last year. He said this year's draft is deeper, but he also liked last year's draft. And I think in some ways, obviously people are going to pick at that because we know what Masai has said about last year's draft and the way they kind of treated it and didn't value having a high pick in that draft. And I think it comes down to just getting value for your picks. And I think that's the main key with the first round especially. And so when you look at the top end talent in last year's draft, are you getting, the first overall pick value, average value for someone like a Zachary Risachet? Second pick, Alex Sarr. Third pick, Reed Shepherd. Ron Holland goes 5th. Tijani Salon goes 6th. So are you actually getting full value for those selections? And I think that's where maybe the Raptors didn't value the top end of that draft as much. And so when Tolzman is saying, he still liked last year's draft, I think it is more about, getting that value in the back end of the first round. And then in the second round as well, obviously the Raptors came away with Jacoby Walter. And now you can say that, hey, the Spurs ended up, drafting Rob Dillingham and trading him. You probably at this point are taking Jacoby Walter over Rob Dillingham. And you can get into a debate about the guys that were still on the board at that point. And, hey, if the Raptors pick, maybe they take a Zach Edey or a Matas Buzelis or a Khalil Ware or even a Jared McCain. That's obviously open to debate, but I don't think you can argue that the Raptors made a bad selection at 19 with Jacoby Walter. Obviously, Jonathan Mobo, I think, has turned out pretty nicely in his first season. And then obviously bringing in Jamal Shed later was a nice piece too. Tolzman obviously said some generic stuff in there as well. They like where they are. They like that they have options. I think the one key that stood out to me, he did reveal that he's finding it, or the organization is finding it difficult to trade up and move above that 9th spot. And for those of you who are thinking of why they might want to do that, well, hey, I think there's been enough noise about Kaman Malawach and maybe seeing that as their top guy and seeing if there's a possibility to move up to try and get him. And obviously that part of it is just my speculation. That's nothing that's come off from Tolzman or anything like that. So I think the difficulty in moving up, he did say that teams are also trying to get the Raptors' ninth pick. And there are, definitely offers coming in for that. And so they're being mindful, they're listening. They've got a pretty big trade board. And so it just comes down to, is there the right deal to be made in the best interest of the team? Other takeaways, he did say positioning is not impacting their player assessment. So, for example, we've all looked at the backup center spot as something that is lacking, that's something that needs to be addressed. Tolzman gave the impression that, that is not going to factor in. And for years, Bobby Webster has also said that they always focus on drafting the best talent available, and it's not so much based off fit. The other thing that Tolzman also kept in mind is when you're drafting a center, you also have to be wary of the fact that that is a very difficult position to learn. And so expectations need to generally be low with centers in terms of contributing right away. And he also said that rotation minutes, with where the team is at right now, might be better filled through free agency and trade. So I think that's another interesting one. So you might want to start looking at free agent centers that could be targets for the Raptors, and look at whoever the Raptors pick at 9, if they pick at 9, as just who they see as the best available talent. Other interesting points that Tolzman made, one for sure, I think, is just looking to the second round. The Raptors are picking 39th in the second round. And he noted the impact that the NIL is having on the second round. And he's saying because the difference in earnings now is negligible between the NIL and what you'd be getting as a second rounder, there's more players opting to stay back in college and earn their money that way, and maybe put themselves in a better position to make the first round a year from now or whenever it might be. So I think that was an interesting takeaway for the second round and for those paying attention there. And lastly, I think there was an interesting note made about Ulrich Chomche, and he was just asked about where the development is at. And Tolzman said that the physical aspect is really coming along strongly, and it's a question of giving him patience, giving him time to learn the game and to get to a point where the game is actually slowing down for him. And that's probably the biggest challenge that Chomche is going to face in the coming years, and just developing that basketball IQ, developing understanding of defensive schemes, and having that quick reaction of where he's supposed to be at all times and things of that nature. The last thing I wanted to do was actually clip for you a question that I asked at the presser. I just figured that was easier than breaking down my own question and answer to Tolzman.
Yeah, and say there's that expectation of who this first 7, 8 will be. How do you feel about that next crop? Is there very little to separate the next 6, 7, 8 guys, or do you maybe just see 2, 3 key guys that you have?
Oh no, it's a big group of guys that are kind of that next tier of players' consideration. And honestly, our 8 is probably different than every other team's 8, above us. And so where the lines are made of who goes ahead of us to the next 6 guys after us, 7 guys after us, whatever, it's kind of blurry. And ours is going to be different than everybody else's. It's definitely going to be different than what you're reading online. But no, we really like the tier of players that we're in right now, and we're trying to figure out the order of it. That's what these meetings over the next few days are going to do, to kind of get to a place where we're comfortable with it is. But the biggest thing with that is it opens things up. If we're really comfortable with this group of players and guys that were comfortable, through these meetings, if they end up still being on the board later in the draft, when the draft actually comes, that's where conversations of trying to jump back in and get a guy because we have them ranked so high during this process is it comes out, you know. So these are what all these kind of leading up to the draft, these meetings do, is it sorts out not only what we'll do at 9, but also how it shapes the rest of the draft.
Coming up next, we'll get into the mailbag questions. OLIPOP is a new kind of soda, made for people who love the classic taste of soda but want something that supports their health. With just 2 to 5 grams of sugar and 9 grams of prebiotic fiber in every can, OLIPOP is reimagining soda in a way that's better for your gut. Traditional sodas are loaded with sugar, like 39 grams in a regular Coke or 44 grams in an orange Fanta. OLIPOP flips that script with just a fraction of the sugar, no artificial sweeteners, and gut-friendly ingredients like OliSmart, a blend shown to support digestive and overall health. It's soda that tastes like the real thing, but actually does something good for your body. Cracking open a new can of Pop now actually feels amazing because OliSmart's prebiotic blend actually supports my gut health. Get a free can of OLIPOP. Just buy any 2 cans in store and they'll reimburse you for 1. Head to drinkolipop.com/LockedOnNBA to claim your free can and find OLIPOP near you. That's drinkolipop.com/LockedOnNBA. All right, now we are going to get into a question from Kaz on the Discord. Thank you for the question. Can we get a Vivek top 5 list of draft prospects you'd like the Raptors to take at number 9? Remove the dudes who will surely go earlier. So, if we're removing the players that we expect to be gone by number 9, that means no Cooper Flagg, no Dylan Harper, no VJ Edgecombe, no Ace Bailey, Trey Johnson, Con Canupo, and Jeremiah Fears. I think those guys are fair to put out of the equation. I'm not 100% sure on what's going to happen with Maluach, even though it feels at this stage likely that he will be gone before the Raptors make their pick. So for now, in terms of my top 5, I'm going to put Maluach at number 1. I think he not only has the highest defensive ceiling at the big spot for the NBA, I think that he addresses a major need for this team. And so this is, again, coming down to my top 5 and the way I would view it with the way the roster is currently. I would prioritize getting a center in. And so that's where Maluach is quite easily my number 1. Number 2, I went with Carter Bryant. I've really liked what I've seen from the film with him. He, I believe, is someone who can be rotation ready. I think the 3-point shot is good enough. I think the defense will be good enough. And so I think when you have those 2 things, you are instantly a candidate to be on the floor and get rotation minutes. Obviously, it's going to be stiff competition considering the Raptors' depth at the wing spots, but I think he is someone that could surprise in that regard. Number 3, this is where it got interesting. So I looked at a few different options here. I ended up going with, let me tell you this first. It came down to actually debating Derek Queen and Thomas Sorber. So again, I've mentioned my preference to get a big in this draft. I do think that Sorber edges it out because of the defensive acumen. I think everything from his film shows someone who can be potentially a defensive savant. Like, I think he's got great instincts. I think that wingspan at 7'6" can cause real problems. Maybe the athleticism, like, you know, the fast twitch isn't quite there with him. And for a guy 6'10", maybe you'd want that, but I still feel like the instincts are really, really good on the defensive side of the ball. I think he's got, on the offensive end, some playmaking chops, and I wouldn't say he's like a hub by any means, but I do think that, you know, he's someone that can, you know, keep an offense in its flow and keep the ball moving. And I think just in watching the film, there were opportunities as well where, you know, he was even in some inverted pick and roll stuff that, he was able to function really well off of. So I think that is a good skill in this Raptors offense to have. In terms of his individual scoring, I think that's probably the biggest weakness. I think it has some decent potential when it comes to scoring inside and finishing. He's definitely a play finisher. But I do feel like the polish on the offensive end isn't quite there. The jumper isn't there. And that's where, when you're debating versus Queen, that's where it gets a bit tricky. But in the end, I think when I'm looking at the long-term potential of these two, I just like Sorber because I just lean defense. One of the things that Tolzman did say was, hey, we are looking at guys who can be down the line, long-term playoff players. And so the two things he highlighted there are, hey, can they physically take hits? And two, if their bodies aren't physically ready to take those hits, from the interview process and all the scouting and information that they've gathered about these players, do they have the mental fortitude to take the hits? Do they have the mental fortitude to put in the work to get to a point where they're physically able to take the hits? So I think from a playoff perspective, which is the long-term potential, I like Sorber better than I do Queen. I think Queen, could be someone who comes off the bench and gives you that offensive spark. And I think that would be, extremely valuable to certain teams. I could definitely see him on a team like the Houston Rockets where he can, back up Alperen Sengun and just come in and have an offensive impact. And there's enough defense around him to kind of hang. So I think that's where I lean Sorber first. And I do think, there is a bit of, in terms of the way his draft story is projecting, there is a bit of that OG Anunoby where OG gets the injury and now he falls down the draft at 23 and the Raptors are able to get him. And I think that's why Sorber is being projected lower because of the foot injury that he suffered and the playing time that he missed. Are there long-term concerns with the foot? That's something that I'll have to leave to the Raptors medical staff. They'll have to, figure that out if they do select him. But I do think the talent that he has is better than what he's been projected at so far. The one thing I will say is both these players, their jumpers, I'm not too enthused by. I'm not too impressed by. And so I think both of them are actually going to need quite a bit of work on their jumpers. Queen obviously has the better offensive polish when it comes to just getting to the basket, got real nice game off the bounce. You don't expect that from a guy his size at 6'10". So I do think that that aspect of his game is definitely levels above Sorber, but I'm going Sorber as my third guy. Fourth is Derek Queen. Fifth, I went with Noah Asenge. I do think that that's another player there that you can take a swing at. There is enough potential that's tantalizing. I do think that he's someone that should at least have a decent floor. I don't think, if we go to the Bruno Caboclo example, I don't think you're looking at someone who is going to be like 2 years away from being 2 years away, and then we never know. I do think this is someone that should, at a minimum, become a rotation caliber player. People have made the skinny Giannis comp, and obviously we know how skinny Giannis Antetokounmpo was when he came into the NBA. And it would take an immense amount of work to get Asenge's body anywhere near what Giannis's body is right now. So I think there's big gaps to fill. I think Asenge, the biggest things, again, to me that stand out with him are just the way he's able to run the floor, get ahead of the pack. Some of that you discount a little bit because it's the German league and the athleticism in the NBA is just going to be vastly different. And just I think there is someone who's a smart basketball player, and I think that's something that the Raptors have prioritized as well. When you look at the picks between Jacoby Walter, Grady Dick, Jonathan Mobo, Jamal Shed, it's like there's clear basketball IQ to those guys and understanding. So I think that is something that Asenge has as well. So that's my top 5 as a wild card. I'll throw Igor Demin in there. If you're going to take a guard, I think the guy who has the best passing chops in this draft class is someone who is intriguing. His size obviously is intriguing. There's going to have to be some work with the jumper, the individual scoring, and all of that. But I think if you're looking beyond those guys at number 9, I think he is someone that can kind of potentially fulfill what you're hoping for from the 9th selection. Beyond that, I will be honest, I do think that's when the Raptors should probably look to trade down and consider their options there. And yeah, that is my top 5. Lastly, I also, in terms of the questions about the draft, skip to my Lou asked what my draft night plan is. So I will be credentialed with Locked On Raptors, so I will be at OVO Athletic Center and covering the draft from there. We'll see how it goes down for the Raptors. That's kind of been my routine the last several years. There's maybe been a one-off where I've just like watched it from home. Before that, it was fun. Before this career, obviously, I have a bunch of friends who are big basketball fans, so we would kind of make a night of it and watch the draft. But also, like, that is probably going further back because obviously the Raptors had a long stretch where they were pretty successful. But I can remember watching, the Siakam draft with friends and making plans like that. So it's been a bit of an evolution in the plan over the years. And so, yeah, that is pretty much my draft night plan. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. Your personal CFO giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, I can use Monarch to check my finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com. Code LOCKEDONNBA for half off your first year. And we are here and ready to wrap it up. I said we are going to get into the Pascal Siakam comments after Game 7 of the NBA Finals. Obviously, tough loss for the Pacers. I think this was just a season that, probably deserved a championship. If you're the Oklahoma City Thunder, 68 wins, you get it done. You get over the line. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, amazing. Jalen Williams, amazing. Chet Holmgren had a stellar Game 7. Maybe not a great series, but came through in Game 7. But yeah, for the Pacers, just tough. Like seeing the Tyrese Halliburton injury, you never want to see that. Achilles, it's such a bummer. So I do think, especially considering the fact that they're not going to be the same next season without him, it is going to be a tough one for Pacers fans to swallow that. The way Tyrese started the game, the way they were looking good, that could have been a really, really fun finish. And they still competed for most of the way. Kind of, lost control a bit in that third quarter, and that was the difference. But yeah, coming back to Pascal, So I think the first bit of context here is that this is a question that was asked about Tyrese Halliburton. And Pascal was specifically asked, hey, like when the injury happens, what's going through your mind? So let's keep that in mind. And so Pascal says some great things about Tyrese. And he says he's one of the big reasons I'm here. He made it super fun to be here. A couple years ago, basketball was just kind of dark for me and not fun at all. I got traded here, and these guys gave me a boost, starting with Ty. Playing with these guys is incredible. Just found my joy for the game and just playing with so much swagger and happiness. That's all I want to do as a player, and I lost that for a while. It's just so incredible that I came to a team like these guys. Then he thanks the organization, he thanks the coaches, and he says, I didn't think this was possible because of the situation I was in. It's amazing what we accomplished this year. So, given the first bit of context, and then obviously, I think for him personally, it was about reflecting on where he was individually before he came over and just the way Tyrese and the team embraced him and just wanting to show appreciation for that. So I think that's the main thing that you have to keep in mind here is just how grateful he is to be in this Pacer situation. Now, in terms of the Raptors aspect of it, and when he's saying that things were kind of dark for me, some people have been saddened by it, that he was made to feel that way. Some people are even disappointed that he and have taken it as a diss somehow. And that's the one thing I wanted to really address here was like, I would not take it that way as at all. He's expressed so much love for the city and his time in Toronto and everything he accomplished and all the good memories he has. So you got to keep all of that in mind. In terms of him just being honest about being in a dark place, we have to remember like the back half of his Raptors tenure, right? Like he got racially abused because of his play in the bubble, which was absolutely ridiculous. We know that things didn't go well in Tampa, and he had gotten into some tiffs with Nick Nurse. There was also that element of wanting the keys to the franchise, but Kyle Lowry still being around and the organization kind of being like, hey, you got to earn it. Like, Lowry is the guy here. He will be the guy as long as he's here. And, maybe that didn't rub him in the best way in terms of, how he wanted to be viewed and how he wanted to be treated. And obviously, Tampa, just as a whole, we can look back on and say was one of the most forgettable experiences for players, fans, organization as a whole. So moving on from that, come back to Toronto. Now you get this number 4 draft pick and Scotty Barnes comes in, and through no fault of Scotty, the organization is starting to pivot. And I think on some level, and this is my own speculation, and it just maybe felt a bit like as things were being put in place for Scotty, there was maybe a bit of frustration that Pascal was feeling because he was told that, hey, you got to earn it, you got to take it. And Scotty was maybe not being given that same challenge of having to take it and was instead maybe being given it. And hey, that's part of the perks of being a top 5 pick, right or wrong, however you want to view that. I think that's just part of how it played out. And then, we get into the stage where Pascal wants the extension and wants to commit to the Raptors long term, but obviously he wants big money, and the Raptors maybe viewed a figure that needed to be lower than that. And Pascal knew that he could get that from other teams, so why would he accept it from the Raptors? And I think that stung him too. His commitment level to the organization, and all the things that he helped bring about. I think he just wanted that commitment and was maybe surprised that it wasn't quite there that love wasn't quite there on the same level. So that happens. There's talk of all this selfishness, and I think just the way we could see it on the court, right? Like the Raptors in their best years, we've associated them with the whole being greater than the sum of its parts. And this was no longer the case. It always felt like five individuals out there in the court in that final stretch. And then, yeah, I think, ultimately the Pascal trade was something that needed to happen because of everything that happened before it. Do things play out differently if you actually try to build around Pascal the right way, and maybe you got him a stretch big and all of that? Like that, we can debate that till the cows come home, right? And I think we've done that ad nauseum already, so I'm not going to continue to get into that. But I think what I will say is Pascal is where he's supposed to be. I think he expressed his gratitude for the situation he has now, and that's all you can really take away from this. He's where he's supposed to be. I think it's worked out for the best for him, and now the Raptors are in a phase where hopefully they're in a good place and they're happy about where they're at, right? And beyond that, seems like OG's in a good spot, seems like Fred's in a good spot. So all around, I think at this stage, we can just look forward to this new era of Raptors basketball. Pascal, I think he just gave an honest answer about his feelings, but I don't think in any way does that take from the great memories he has there, and the things he accomplished as a player when wearing a Toronto Raptors jersey. I think that is a good place to leave it. Thanks for joining in, and head on over to the Locked On Raptors Discord if you want to chat about any of this some more. Thank you for making Locked On Raptors your first listen of the day. For your second listen, check out the 2025 Locked On NBA Mock Draft, a 5-episode series with the most comprehensive NBA draft analysis from NBA experts to college experts to draft experts. Find the 2025 Locked On NBA Mock Draft on NBA Big Board and Locked On NBA on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts.